What is up, and welcome back to another episode of Just Stories with BT. This episode is going to be very exciting for me because I never met Reena before. In fact, we've chatted on social media or whatever, or LinkedIn, but we've literally just talked for the first time ever, like 30 seconds ago. So this is really exciting because I don't know anything about you other than the facts I've read and the things you've sent. So I'm really excited to kind of hear your stories and learn more about you. And so welcome, Reena Merchant.
Thank you for having me, Brett. I'm really excited to chat too. Yeah, we've had a few LinkedIn conversations and social media, but really good to chat with you in person.
Yes. So before we get into talking to you and hearing your stories and hearing about your career and where you are now, so Reena is a user experience leadership at Google. It's a small company. You guys may have heard of it. And I am going to introduce her to all of you for anyone who doesn't know you. And then afterwards, Reena, tell me what I missed or how I blew it. But this is Reena in like 60 seconds, your entire life. Are you ready?
Let's do it. I am so eager to hear your synopsis of my life.
Okay, so here it is. So this is Reena. She was born and raised in Canada. She grew up dancing, painting, reading. And as she got older and got into high school, she got into dancing still, math club, computer programming, as she said, all nerdy things, which have obviously led to this amazing career. So not so nerdy. However, that high school career was not in Canada. It was actually in India, which I'm going to ask you about in a little bit. So she moved there for high school, then came back to Canada for college. So usually I ask people like, what school did you go to? Or I look it up in the bio or ask about it. So normally a normal person has a college, but Reena has like three. So she went to University of Toronto and studied computer science. Then she got her MBA in design strategy from California College of Arts. And she also went to the Art Institute of Toronto and studied digital graphics. All those things seem to kind of be woven into what you've done over the last, decade. So that's pretty incredible. Outside of college, her first job was at CGI Software. And then from there, you went to a bunch of companies. This like pathway is mind blowing to me. So first, she spearheaded the design of mobile and tablet and desktop for a small company called Blackberry, which we're going to come back and talk about because that was a huge part of my first big job was Blackberry. And then from there, you went to be the senior customer experience manager for Citrix, which was also a big part of my early careers because GoToMeeting was like, I remember when it first came out, I was like, oh my God, we can meet everywhere. And it was a big ordeal getting people to use their phone and video. It was like a huge ordeal because people didn't want, before that, it was like only conference, right? So she did that. Then she went and became the senior user experience manager at Sony PlayStation, which must have been a blast. And then has ended up, like I said, at Google as a user experience leader, which is pretty incredible. And during that entire time, she's spoken at over more than 40 engagements all over. I saw them on your LinkedIn. I read through all those different things and I was going to put them all in, but that would be crazy. So check that out if you're listening or you're watching. There was international engagements all over the place. And in 2019, you launched Our Voice, which is a community with a mission to help strengthen and get better with self-confidence and being authentic. And part of that also has a really cool podcast, Our Voice, that everyone needs to check out. And now here you are on Just Stories with BT podcast.
Thank you, Brett. That was an incredible introduction. Can I just, I'm going to record that or write that down because you introduced me better than I've ever introduced myself. Thank you. I appreciate that.
So what did I miss? What would have been something that happened I would have definitely wanted to have added in there?
No, I think you got it. My high school is interesting. I will definitely, we can get into that. My high school was actually split between Toronto and India. So I kind of did a little bit of both. But yeah, I think you got it. Other than that, I can share my family. I didn't tell you about that earlier, but yeah, I've got two amazing parents and a brother in Toronto, and they're still in Canada. So I miss them. I go back and see them pretty often.
I assume your whole family went back to India when you were in high school?
No. So interestingly enough, that's a great question. So growing up, it was myself, my brother, my parents, and my grandmother lived with us. So my dad's mom, she lived with us and we were this family of five. And when I went to India, my parents thought, it would be a good experience. Our family's originally from there. You would learn a lot about the culture, and you can't really get a good sense of a culture of a place until you live there. So they thought it would be a really good immersive experience. They said, okay, they figured they figured grade 9 was the right time to
Yeah.
send me
Oh,
back, like right in the middle of like all the angst of high school,
yeah.
right?
When are
But
you like
in
developmentally like just have no idea what's going on in life? Oh, let's
right,
go there.
yeah. Yeah, like perfect timing to like further confuse someone. Now, in hindsight, it worked out so perfectly. But yeah, in that moment, it was a little bit like, what? But the good thing was, so my grandmother came with me. Not everyone, but my grandmother came. She was the one I spent the most time with when I was there, and it worked out because I had always been really close to my grandmother, so it felt like I had a piece of home with me. And then, my parents, my brother, they'd come visit every once in a while, and then I'd come back to Toronto in like summer breaks. But yeah,
And what was, culturally, what was the biggest shock? Here you are, ninth grader, going from Canada to India. Like, what was the biggest thing that you were just like had to get used to or kind of shocked you?
yeah, yeah. Oh my gosh, so many things. I mean, I had visited India before just in summer breaks. I have aunts and uncles and cousins there. So I knew what it was like. And but yeah, I mean, just like my parents said, it's you don't really understand until you live there. So when I went to live there, I definitely was in for a culture shock. I think everything from language. I mean, I knew the language, but when you go to school there, I mean, in school we'd learn everything in English, but when we had lunch breaks or recess, um, people would be speaking local languages
No.
just casually in the playground or whatever. And things would just go over my head, or like local slang. But also school. I think school was really hard. I was like a straight A student before I left Toronto, and then I went there, and their academic system it's just more advanced. So they're further along. So the things that we learn maybe in grade 12 in North America, they're already learning those things in grade 9. So when I went there, I had finished grade 8. I was doing well. I thought, oh yeah, seamless transition, just start grade 9.
Yeah.
But they were like 3 grades ahead. So oh my gosh, I didn't understand anything. I was failing everything. My first semester
Yeah.
there, I was like barely making it by. And I would say those two things were probably the biggest. And then I missed, I was a kid, I was homesick, I missed
Yeah.
my family. So I was just, but then, a semester went by, 2 semesters went by, and, we're humans, we adapt. And I
Yeah.
got really used to it. And then I made all these friends there, and I was having a good time. And then I didn't want to come back. And then, of course, my parents were like, no, 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 no. Grade
Yeah.
12, you're coming back.
Coming on.
Time to go to college in North America. So yeah, it was a really great experience.
Oh, that's incredible. Yeah, I can't relate in a big picture, but I remember, so when I was in seventh grade, I grew up going to the local public school right by my house, and all my friends and everybody, we all lived, close public school. And then 2 days before junior high was supposed to start. So same thing, not quite as pivotal as high school, but junior high, it's a big deal. Seventh grade. My mom's like, hey, I need you to dress up. We're going to this thing. Doesn't even say what it is. I'm like, okay. I kind of put on something nice, and we drive past the junior high, and we go into this little school. And I'm like, what is this place? It's called Victory. It's like this little private junior high. So what I hadn't known is that my grandma and my mom had been a little concerned about me, like in elementary, and wanted me to, like, I don't know, like have new friends and go to this little private junior high. And so they didn't tell me, and they signed me up for this school, and it had only 50 kids in the entire thing. And obviously I didn't know a
Oh,
soul. And
wow.
I remember being like mortified. Like, this is my life's over. I'll never see my friends again, And at first it was horrible. I was like, I hate this place. But then, to your point, so two of my greatest friends in my life to this day, we're still tight as brothers, like I met at this little junior high, and they've had such a massive impact on my life. And then I went back to public
Yeah.
school for high school. So kind of reunited with
Yeah.
my friends, and it all worked out. But I always look back, like,
Mm.
in the moment I thought, oh my God, my life's over. And then you look back, you're like,
Yeah.
wow, I couldn't imagine life without it.
Exactly. Yeah, no, thank you for sharing. That sounds like an incredible experience. And yeah, that's exactly how it felt like for me. It's in the moment, oh my gosh, the sky is falling. But now it's such an integral part of me, that experience. And I learned so much from it. Sometimes I think the atypical or off the beaten path experiences, they're the ones that teach us the most. So yeah, I'm really grateful for it. I learned a lot, even though in the moment I was just like, what is happening?
Yeah. So, so you worked at Blackberry, right? And that was what years were those?
2000 and probably like 2007.
Yep. Yep.
7, 8, 9, something like that. My memory is rusty. This was a long time ago, but
Yes.
yeah, somewhere around there.
So, well, I'm asking because I just assumed it lined up right when like that's when I got my first BlackBerry, like same time, right? So
Oh,
I was
no
working
way.
for
Yeah.
this like my first kind of real corporate company, and I had a vision like I really wanted to become a district trainer because they got to travel all over and train, and they ran training classes and all this. But really, one of the things that we all wanted was we wanted the BlackBerry because back then, and I hate to admit this because now I think it's like the worst thing ever, but we would wear the Blackberries on our hip.
I know.
These like hard cases. It's awful. The worst look of all time. But back then it was like all I wanted was this BlackBerry that I could strap on my side, you know?
Right.
Which is so funny to think back now. But then it was so cool, you know what I mean?
Yeah. I used to do that too. Like because when I worked there, we'd get our BlackBerry from work, and you'd have the big clips that you could just clip onto your jeans. And the thing was like, it was big, but yeah. Oh, and it was just joined at the hip. Like it would just follow me everywhere. And I got it, it got to the point where I didn't even have to look at it because the physical keyboard, you just type and type. Yeah.
I remember, and I don't know if this happened to you, but I still remember I actually was one of the ones that was like holding off on switching to the iPhone because I was so concerned about my typing speed. Because I felt like on the BlackBerry, I was like at 8 million words a second. And I was like, I'm going to go so slow on these stupid iPhone, you know? And I held out forever and then finally got the iPhone. And I was like,
absolutely.
Oh, actually kind of cool.
Yeah.
One of my friends, so we used to run these training classes. And so they'd be like 15 people or so. So we had a big training center and then these like 2 restrooms, and the restroom in the back was for all the people in the class. And the restroom out front was like the storefront or whatever. So we all had to use this restroom in the back. And one of our trainers comes out and he's like, oh man, the toilet's clogged, you know, and we had this big training class and I'm like, oh my God. So I'm trying to call to find like a plumber to come fix it because we got 15 people coming in. And he's just like, yeah, you know, I tried to fix it. We can't fix it. So he like, you know, put a tape on the door and it was like this whole ordeal. So then the next day we were having a debrief meeting and the plumber comes and he comes in the room and it was perfect timing because we're all sitting in this giant conference room, like all the local leadership for our company. And the plumber comes in the back and he goes, hey, sorry to interrupt you guys' meeting, but I figured out what clogged your toilet. And I see the guy who said that someone in the class had clogged it, you know, like the guy who worked for me is one of my trainer. I see him just turning red, like,
oh no.
Red. And the plumber goes, yeah, there was actually just something stuck in the toilet lodge and I fished it out. And he's holding this guy's BlackBerry because he had gone to go like, you know, to the bathroom or whatever. And he had knocked it out of his holster in the toilet. And then he thought, oh, I'll just hit the flush and grab it. And then just flush. And he totally made this story. And he's still to this day, it's like, I don't see him very often, but when I do, like we all still bring it up, you know, because it was so embarrassing.
Oh, poor guy. He probably didn't expect that would be announced in front of the whole training session. Never. That is unfortunate.
So last question before I get into the stories and more of your background, but obviously you went to those 3 different schools and it seemed like you learned lots of different things. So which one was your favorite and, you know, like that you think you took or maybe had the biggest impact on you?
Oh, that's such a great question. It's hard to pick just one. I mean, the most recent one that I went to was California College of the Arts, and that's where I did the MBA in design strategy. And I would say if I had to pick one, that would be it because it was just really cool how that program allowed me to, it almost like just brought together all the other experiences that I'd had and all the other things I'd learned in undergrad, et cetera. And it just like brought everything together and it unified it. And so I would say that was my favorite. But I mean, so my undergrad in computer science was really good, and I still feel that experience and what I learned helps me to this day. I mean, I don't code anymore. I used to be a Java developer when I first started my career. I haven't coded in so long, but that experience helps me just understand, being in the tech industry, understanding how engineering teams work and being able to collaborate with partners and understanding the process. I think it really, really helps. And then going to art school, of course, the Art Institute of Toronto, that was great because I'd always had an interest in art and design. And so it was great that I had done computer science, but I was kind of aching to bring that creative side back. So that was really cool that it just allowed me to immerse myself in that. So I'm really glad that I did that. But yeah, the design strategy MBA was so good because it basically was like going to business school, but imagine if everything is taught through the lens of design strategy and innovation, which is what I do. And so it was really cool because I wanted those business skills, but it also allowed me to incorporate all my other interests and all my other skills. And it was just so perfectly aligned to what I do day to day in my job and in my career. So I would say if I had to pick one, it's that most recent experience that
Nice.
is closest to me.
I love that. That's awesome. Yeah, I think that I don't know if I use anything from school in what I do now. It sounds horrible.
Yeah.
I'm sure I do. Like I had a great education, but I studied political science and sociology, and it, just had nothing, ended up like nothing to do with sales or like anything I got into, but loved it. Great experience. It definitely shaped me as a person in relationships and all that stuff. But it's just so funny. I just so unspecialized. But I think that's the beauty of where I think college is going now. Is I think most of the kids, like I know my kids, like, being 10, 11, 12, like they're already thinking of like, how can I specialize or do these really cool niche things, as opposed to just business or just something, like you said, your experience was
Yeah.
so good because you can use it. And I think that now, I think it's hard for young people to swallow like a $200,000 debt and not be able to use it,
Yeah.
which is tough. So hopefully that
Yeah. Yeah.
happens less.
Yeah.
So tell
Yeah.
us, before I get into a couple stories, give us the 10,000-foot view on what you're doing currently at Google, just like so we can kind of have an understanding of what you do day to day.
Yeah, absolutely. So I've been with Google almost 4 years now, and I love it. It's such a great culture. The people are awesome, and I'm grateful to be able to do work that impacts so many users. So I work on the YouTube team. YouTube ads specifically. So what we do is my team, we design the ad experience that you see on YouTube. So if you're using YouTube, the free version of YouTube, on any platform, mobile, on your computer, on your TV, and you come across ads, our team designs the consumer facing experience of those ads. So as a user, you see these ads, what do they look like? How do they appear? Where do they appear? How do users interact with them? And our mission is we want to make that ad experience good for users because ads ultimately, of course, are important for the business, for revenue, for Google, for YouTube. And they're also important for advertisers because advertisers, they come to us, they want to advertise their products and services. So from a user standpoint, advertisers are one of the user groups that we want to make sure we design for, but we've got to really get that experience right for the YouTube viewers, and as well as there's creators on YouTube too, and creators on YouTube, they it's important to monetize their content so that it's kind of like this ecosystem, and the work we do fuels that ecosystem. And yeah, our mission is to create good ad experiences for users. So that's what we do. And I manage the user experience team. So it's a team of designers and researchers that are working in this space.
Nice. And do you work on campus, or you've been remote, or how's that been during the pandemic?
Typically, yeah, during the pandemic, remote, typically on campus. So typically we have our YouTube headquarters in San Bruno, and that's the office that I'm located in. But yeah, we've all been remote since the beginning of the pandemic. So it's been yeah, just trying to keep that connection with everyone, but everyone's at home right now.
And have you guys gone back at all for meetings or anything, or is it just nope?
No, it's been fully remote. They did open the offices for just if you want to go in, you want to reserve some space to work. I think they opened that up a couple of months ago. So some people have been going in occasionally to pick up stuff or like work out of a meeting room if they need that. But for the most part, everyone's just home, and the offices have not fully reopened yet.
That's crazy. I couldn't imagine. We
Yeah.
I started going back hybrid last June, like not this June, but
Hmm.
like last year.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
which was nice because I struggled in those, like, just, we were only home for a couple
Yeah.
months, but just that
Hmm.
not having the, human interaction, and then like
Yeah.
the brainstorming and all this stuff, it was challenging,
Yeah.
and I can
Yeah.
only imagine with what you guys are trying to do. I'm sure,
Yeah.
although I guess you have tech on your side, you probably have some great ways to connect.
Yeah, yeah, no, it's true though. I agree with what you're saying. I think we all experienced that too. We were just so used to it's like second nature. It's like, oh, we need to figure this out. Let's have a workshop and then we'll just meet in person or we'll do some whiteboarding or we'll have a design sprint. And it was just so normal for us to, as you described too, similar to your experience, it was normal for us to have that FaceTime. So we just depended on it. And then all of a sudden, it's gone and you don't have that option anymore. And so you're right. I mean, technology has been helpful, but for a minute, I mean, I think there was a bit of an adjustment period for everyone. And maybe you experienced that too with your team, but we kind of had to recalibrate, like, wait, so how do we do this again? Because we can't we
Yeah.
can't meet in person and we can't whiteboard and we can't all get in a room. So let's find new ways of doing things. But I think people have adjusted now. But yeah, we definitely miss each other and want to see each other in person.
Oh, no doubt. So, question, did you see the movie The Intern? Was it Internship?
No, I haven't. I
You
need to
never
watch
saw
it.
it?
I know, isn't it ridiculous?
Oh
I
my
haven't
gosh.
seen. I need to watch it. I'm
Yes,
going to
put
watch
it
it
on the list.
tonight. Yes,
Okay, put it
on the
on the
list.
list and then send me a message after, because I'm just curious. I just want to know, like, I know it's outrageous and not like it's there, but obviously it was shot like on the campus or whatever. I'm just curious. Like,
Yeah.
I'm sure some funny things in there you will love, and I can't believe you haven't seen that. I
I
can't
know,
wait to
it's
hear what
ridiculous.
happens
It is
after you
on the
watch.
top of my list. Next movie that I'm watching.
So tell us, you've had this really amazing career at these different organizations, and anytime you have a career spanning, through different organizations, and you've gotten to a really successful place, there's generally along the way some type of failure or challenge or something that was really difficult that you went through. And I'd love to hear a story around that, if you could share with us.
Yeah, absolutely. Happy to share. So, yeah, it has been an interesting career journey for me. I mean, I just, even just geographically, I started in Toronto and then I ended up, I actually moved to Southern California, not San Diego, I wish, but Ventura and the LA area. I worked in Santa Barbara, actually. So
That's
that
beautiful.
is
Yeah.
also somewhat enviable.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was really nice. And then, I ended up in San Francisco, which has been nice. So geographically, there's been a journey. Also, just domain. It's been like, I've bounced back and forth between the consumer space and, like gaming, PlayStation, that kind of thing, to like more like enterprise or SMB, like at Citrix working on GoToMeeting. So that's been a journey. But yeah, there definitely have been failures along the way. I think the biggest one for me I can share is it actually happened at Blackberry. So back when I was there, that was around the time where BlackBerry was doing mass layoffs because they were just going through so much change and transition as a company. And I was actually impacted by the layoffs and I lost my job. And I was, a lot early. I was green, I was younger, I was earlier in my career. And so that was a big hit because at that stage in your life, I was still building up my confidence. I was still trying to, get in the rhythm of
Yeah.
things. And then when you have a blip like that, it I was lost, I was confused, I completely unexpected. Like you don't expect that to happen. You don't plan for it,
Yeah.
especially when you're early career. You're just like, so eager to get going. And yeah, I mean, I think it really affected my confidence. And so I would say that is probably the biggest career journey failure. And it was definitely tough coming out of that. But I learned a lot from that experience.
Yeah, well, maybe you could expand on that. Like, what do you think? How did that shape the rest of your career, or kind of coming out of that? Did you have any lingering effects? Like years later? Because I know I have a story around that.
Yeah, and I'd love to hear your story too. I definitely did have lots of kind of lingering and cascading effects from that. I mean, I think in the immediate term, it was just I lost my sense of identity, right? I had, and a lot of us do this, we spend so much time at work and we put so much energy and passion into our careers. And my identity was really based on, hey, this is who I am, this is what I do, this is where I work. And then when you kind of lose that overnight, you're not ready for it. You're like, wait, so what's my identity now? You kind of feel empty. And also, it's not just the loss of it, it's the way I lost it. And when you get laid off, it feels like a rejection. Even though you tell yourself, no, it's just this has more to do with what the company is going through right now. We're human. Like, you can't help but take it personally. It's like, well, maybe if I was better, maybe I would have been one of the people they kept. And so definitely in the immediate term, I was just lost, confused, just feeling really low. And then, yeah, I think there definitely are, like, there were lingering effects. I think just building up my self-confidence again, it took a while. And there would be times when I'm like, okay, yeah, I'm good now. And then I was like, no, I'm not. And you kind of have this, like, it kind of goes like this. And it took many years for me to just recover from that and realize that, hey, no, like, what is failure anyway, right? Like, failure, it's something that didn't go the way we thought it did, and then we get disappointed, and so we call it a failure. And so now I can look back many years later and say, no, you know what, that maybe I don't need to define that as a failure. That wasn't a failure. That was just something that went differently than I thought it would, and it sucked. There was disappointment because I didn't want it to go that way. But that, I mean, it was because of that I ended up in California. If I hadn't, because what happened was I lost my job and then I was looking for another job. I did some contract work in the meantime, but the very next full-time opportunity I got, I kind of expanded my search beyond Toronto. I was like, oh, let's try looking in California. And I happened to get a job at Citrix, and that brought me to California. What if I never got laid off? Maybe I wouldn't have looked, and maybe I would have still been in Toronto, which might have been wonderful. But I ended up here, talking to you right now because of that experience. So I think that's been my biggest learning, which is like, maybe I need to stop thinking of that as a failure. And it's more just, that was just part of my journey. But I'd love to hear about your experience too.
Well, yeah, I'll give you the quick version, but yeah, I similarly, my first ever job I would consider like a, career type job. I worked for a surf skate clothing brand, and I was a national sales director in college and kind of coming right out of school. I thought I would do that forever. We went from one account to 400, and it was this great thing. And I've talked about this actually previous in the podcast, but I was dating the guy that owned the whole company. I was dating his daughter. And the guy that was the creative mind behind the whole thing, my sister was dating him. It was like this, we were all intertwined, and everyone in my life was involved in this company. It was everything to me. Like you said, it was my identity, but also like literally everyone, all my friends, everyone worked there. And then those relationships both ended in a week, right around the holidays. And when I came back after Christmas, and it was the most awkward, like it was just weird. And then the guy that owns the whole company came in and basically just said, like, yeah, you're not doing what, you're not living up to the expectations of the job, and we're going to move in a different direction. But yet he had never told me even what to do. I just I was the first employee, and I'd worked there forever as my life, and I'd grown that company. And I remember, unfortunately, I was too young to understand that it was just awkward. And he was like, this is really awkward. And his daughter was going to stay on, and she was a great designer. And so it was like, you're out. That was what happened. But the way I took it was, oh, I guess I'm not good at this. I'm not doing a good job. And what happened is that I'm still, all these years later, 15, 16, 18 years later, still dealing with that little voice, like, are you doing a good job? And so I've always gone like, and on the good hand of it was, it propelled me into a really great career, because I've always felt like I was more determined and worked harder than anybody around me, because I was like, I never want that to happen again. On the bad side is, I've had, great supervisors who I love, who are dear, dear friends of mine, be like, grab me by the shoulder and be like, dude, you're doing a great job. Stop worrying. Or like, I'd get one bad comment on a review of a company with 10,000 people, and I'd just be thinking about it all night, like, oh my God, And so that really had an impact on me, like I had to like get over it. And I think over the last few years, I've, maybe it's just time and, like being able to look back and see it. I could see the pattern and understand it. And now I think I'm better about recognizing if I'm feeling that way and being like, whoa, dude, you're fine. You know what I mean? Like, you're doing great. Everything's good. Like, those are just like, anxieties or whatever, but it really came from that moment, And so it's just interesting, like you said, same kind of thing. You especially when you're young, I think you really do define yourself as this job or this thing, I think it's very common. And
Yeah.
I've tried to over the years get better about like, what defines me is, is my relationships and my family and my kids and or whatever, and like all these things that are me, and work is a big part of it, but it's not my life, or whatever,
Hmm.
if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah. No, thank you for sharing. And that resonates with me so much. I went through the same thing.
So obviously that's a tough time, but I would love to hear a story around success, right? And so it can be any from any of those companies or multiple stories, but really like when was a time in your career where, something happened and maybe that night you went home and you're brushing your teeth or the next day and you were just like, I can't believe this is happening or this just happened.
Oh, so many. I mean, so many things that I'm so grateful for that have like really worked out. I mean, everything from like I think I'm really excited that I ended up in California. I think so getting the job at Citrix and making the move to like Southern California was a big moment, I think, in my journey. And I really felt like that was a success, especially coming out of the situation at Blackberry where I had been laid off and my self-confidence had really taken a hit. So I think that was really nice. I still remember getting the call and finding out that I had the job offer to join Citrix. And I remember being a little bit nervous at the time. I was like, oh no, wait, so this is becoming real. Am I actually moving to California? Because the idea of it was great, but then when it becomes real,
Yeah.
I kind of freaked out. But no, I would say that is definitely one moment that really stands out to me as it felt like a success, especially because of where I was in my life at the time. And I was really excited, nervous, but excited. And then I think too, I mean, I loved my time at PlayStation. I was grateful for that. I think getting the job at Google was really nice. It had always been something that I had aspired to be able to work at a company like Google. I think the scale is really exciting when I think about just the products that we get to work on and the number of users whose lives we get to impact through the work. That was just kind of like it was a dream of mine to be able to do that and have that impact at scale. So I think that was also really exciting. And it was really sad to leave Sony PlayStation because it was just such a cool product to work on and really cool people. But yeah, I would say it's been a great transition coming to Google.
Yeah. And what was that process like getting hired? I've heard kind of different stories and maybe it's just blown out of proportion, but I've heard they have a really like kind of unique and rigorous like interview process.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely rigorous. There are many steps to it, and I think it's probably similar to some of the other large tech companies. So basically, I had a phone interview initially with the recruiting team, and then I got to meet different people, like different people from the team. So I met the hiring manager, had a call with her, and then you go through the interview loop eventually, which is like you know nowadays it's all remote because of pandemic, but when I was interviewing it was in person. So I got to go to the Google office and it's kind of like a whole day, and you start by doing I did it was a 30 to 40-minute portfolio presentation. And so you kind of go through that experience. You've got like the whole panel of 5 or 6 people and you're presenting your work to them. And then throughout the day, you kind of have the chance to meet each person one-on-one. So each person that was there watching your portfolio review, you then meet them for like maybe 45 minutes or so one-on-one, and you kind of deep dive with them and you talk to them and they interview you. So it is definitely, there's a lot of, it's a long process. I understand why now being on the flip side of it, I understand why. But yeah, it was definitely felt good after all that. It was very rewarding to be like, okay, yay. I did it, I got through it, and it doesn't matter how it turns out, but it felt very gratifying to like go through that process. And you also I got to meet so many amazing people through the interview process. Like just everyone's so nice. And so it felt really good at the end of it. And I was like, no matter what happens, I did it. And I'm proud of myself. And then, an offer manifested from that. So that obviously feels really good too.
Yes, that's awesome. Yeah, I've heard about that. And I had a friend recently go through a process and it was crazy. She kind of shared with me, she had to like build this entire deck out and this long presentation and then all the, she just explained all the process. I was like, wow, this is pretty intense. I figured you had gone through something like that.
Yeah.
So tell me, I want to switch gears a little bit. I mentioned it in the intro, but you launched the Our Voice in 2019. Can you tell us about that? And like, what was the inspiration and what's the kind of backstory behind it?
Yeah. So this was something that I think I didn't know what it would look like, but it was something that I had wanted to do, like something along these lines for almost a large chunk of my life. I think the inspiration behind it is that growing up, I was a shy kid, and I didn't, I guess it was, I didn't have much of a voice. I would always hold back. I think it was a self-confidence thing. I would sort of hesitate to just be myself or speak up. And I always just thought, no, I would be so worried about what other people thought about me, or like meeting the expectations of others to the point where I wasn't just being myself. And that was a key thread throughout the journey of my life. And different situations would come about because of that. And then I was learning and growing along the way, and I thought, like I noticed this about myself, and I thought, this is interesting. This feels like it's a key theme in my life. And then the more I would talk to other people, as I started realizing this about myself, and I would talk to other people, it's like, well, okay, I'm not the only one. Like we all, to some extent, we're all on some kind of journey of self-discovery, authenticity, self-confidence. Like it's something that somehow in all of our lives, it sometimes comes up. And the more I talked to other people, I realized, okay, I'm not alone. And it was so near and dear to my heart. And it's such a big part of my journey that I thought I one day want to do something where I can give back and I can help others. And initially, I thought I'm going to do it in the future one day when I figure it out, when I am the master of this and I've mastered how to be authentic and how to be confident and how to have my own voice. That is the day when I'm going to do something and give back. And then I think a couple of years ago in 2019, when I launched it, I realized, well, I'm never going to master this. Like, I'm never going to be the expert of this, because how? I'm going to be learning and growing and developing this for the rest of my life. It's going to be a forever kind of thing. So I thought, okay, well then what am I waiting for? If I want to do something, I should just do it. And yeah, that's how the idea formed. I just thought, okay, what if there was a community, an organization, a forum where there were resources available to all of us around, anyone interested in, just strengthening their own internal feeling of confidence, or whether it's just how that manifests externally and how we show up and having a voice and how we just can be ourselves and be comfortable being ourselves. And so that's how it took shape. And so I launched it in 2019, and then I've just been developing that on the side. And yeah, there's a podcast, there's articles, there's a Medium blog. I started doing some live events, but that was pre-pandemic. That kind of slowed down a little bit right now, but hopefully once the pandemic is done, can do more of that as well.
Yeah. I think that's actually how I connected with you on LinkedIn. I think I listened to a podcast episode. Somehow I saw it or it came in my feed. And that was like actually the first thing I think I ever reached out. I was like, wow, this is really good. Because I always,
Thank you.
my drive to my office is like an hour and 10 minutes or so, give or take.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of perfect podcast length, So I started a couple years ago, like just ripping through so many different everything. Like doesn't really matter to me the genre. I just like what I like. So I'll just try to find cool stuff and different things. And I think one of the things I love about LinkedIn is that I've just found so many different, I don't want to call them obscure, but just things I would never find, like I wouldn't search through Spotify or whatever. It would just be like, I would find these things and see people's content on LinkedIn or whatever. And then be like, oh, wow, they got something cool over here. And I would check it out, And so now I've listened to a bunch of episodes, which is really cool. And I like, I'm a big fan of things that can empower people. And at the end of the day, I think the thing that you said that I think is the most important, in the buildup of when you were explaining it, is just that it doesn't really matter what we're doing. No one's ever ready. No, nothing's ever perfect. Like I always give my mom the hardest time. She's an amazing watercolor painter, like just amazing. But she's never done. Like a painting's never done. Like she'll sit there forever, and I'm like, just sell it, put it on the wall, like give it to somebody. Like it's great, And she's like always like, oh, I don't know. Like she'll work on like one, like for so long, and want to be like, Mom, just put it on the wall, But to that point, I think that that stops people from doing so many things in life, that they just want to
Yes.
wait, or they just want to that. And you're like, well, you know what? Like I did the same thing with this podcast, or even I had a
Yeah.
blog, on presenting and all these things. And what I realized was like, you know what? Nobody has it all figured out. So
Yeah.
you might as well just go and then figure it
Yeah.
out along the way. And
Yeah.
when things don't go well, that's just an opportunity. That's just how you're going to
Right.
learn, like, oh, don't do
Yes.
that. Like
Yes.
I made like in some of my first few episodes, it was like, I didn't realize that you had to press like gallery view or something to get the screen like this. So then it would do the rotating thing and I couldn't figure it out. I'm like,
Right.
what's going on? I was so frustrated. I had one
Yeah.
podcast. It was so sad. I recorded this one podcast from someone in London and I had turned on accident the gain on my microphone all the way up. And so I thought it was this great episode. And then I went to hear it and it was like every time I talked, it was all, and I was like,
Yeah. Yeah.
no,
Yeah. Yeah.
that felt
No,
so bad.
I completely relate to that because when I launched Our Voice, and I launched the podcast actually last year, same thing. I didn't know how to podcast. I'm like, wait, so you record something and then and then what happened? Like, well, even the recording is hard. Like you said, like, do I need headphones, a mic? And then you need a host. And it's just the whole thing was new. But I agree. It's like I think we just, and by the way, I also relate to your mother because I'm a designer. So I get that the whole like, design is never done or art is never done. But yeah, I think it's just so many times we hold back because we're afraid. I spent most of my life doing that. It's like I didn't want to fail or I wanted the outcome of something to be perfect. So I was like, no, 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 I need more prep. I'm not ready yet. But it's like, like you said, I mean, we're never going to be ready. So just jump in and then you learn along the way. And then, yeah, we've already established there's no such thing as failure. It's always an opportunity. So,
Yeah. So tell me, one of the last things I wanted to talk about was obviously this season 2 is all just been these amazing, female executives, CEOs, entrepreneurs, and mainly in what I would consider underrepresented industries as far as leadership goes. And I know Google's very diverse, but I know coming up in the tech world specifically, at least any tech teams I've ever worked with, are very male dominated. And I would love to hear, like coming up as a female, like, did you ever come up against any challenges or, yeah, so I'll ask that first. Did you ever come up against any challenges?
yeah, I mean, absolutely. I think everything from, I shared earlier, my undergrad was in computer science. And even when I was in school, we had like several hundred students in the program. And I think in my class, there were only like 8 or 10 females. And so everything, like, it starts there. And then, yeah, in the tech industry, and you're right. I mean, Google is very diverse, but also in the industry, things are shifting now and there's a lot more diversity. But yeah, generally, especially as I look back to my journey, I was many times I felt like the other in the industry. And it's just that there's layers of it, right? I'm a female, I'm a woman of color. Many times I would be younger than people in the room. And so you start stacking these things up and you really feel like the other. So I definitely had my share of challenges. A lot of times it was just, it was that internal feeling of, oh my gosh, I'm different. The other thing about me, which I really embrace now, but at the time I hesitated, it's just my demeanor. There's a lot of like, strong, powerful personalities that I would see in the tech industry. You walk into a boardroom and there's just like these really loud voices. And that's not me. That's just not my demeanor. That's not my style. I'm not the loudest person in the room. I have a different style and it's an effective style and I get things done, but it's very different. And when you feel like you're different, sometimes you feel like you have to change to conform.
Mm-hmm.
And I spent a lot of my career trying to conform because I felt like I had convinced myself that I have to conform to succeed. Like if I'm not like that, I can't succeed. And there's certain things you can't change about yourself. You can't change the way you look. You can't change the color of your skin. But you could try to change your style, or you can try to, then, I would overcompensate in certain ways to try to make up for the things that I couldn't change. So it was just, it didn't work because it doesn't work. It's tiring and it's not sustainable. And so definitely that's been a big challenge. And I think it's been a journey to get to a place where it's like, no, I'm just me. that's how I'm going to show up. And I want to do this. I want to be in this industry, and I'm going to be comfortable showing up as me. And then, of course, we have work to do in the industry to create an environment where everyone can succeed. So that's we need to keep working on that.
Yeah, and how does that happen? Like, how do you attract more top female talent into an industry that maybe from the outside looking in, they may walk by that class in college and only see, 10% or 20%. So that why would I want to do that?
Yeah, no, and I think you nailed it, Brett. I think that's the challenge. It's like it's like a, it's like a catch 22 to attract more um, diverse talent in the industry. You need an environment that is going to help. Like it feels like anyone can succeed, no matter what their background is, and that becomes easier to do once you have more diversity in the mix to begin with. So it's like this catch 22. So I think the responsibility is on all of us who are in the industry right now. I think there's a little bit of extra work we have to do now to really change existing processes or change our internal sort of subconscious biases, or just the way we work, or the way the industry is structured. We're going to have to like work a little bit extra hard, I think, and I think everyone is, to sort of get past that initial hurdle. And then, yeah, I think and we're seeing it as we have different people of different backgrounds in the industry more and more. I think it's just then it just takes off, right? And it's like a snowball, and it just grows and grows from there.
Yeah, I love that. And that's definitely been such a theme with this season. I keep hearing that kind of on loop, like, okay, well, we know there's an issue in all these different industries, and yet, you know, you got to have people that are going to attract those same kind of people. And so I think to your point, doing things like this, help. If I'm a 21-year-old female, I might be listening to Reena going, man, I want to do that. This looks awesome. I want to work it for YouTube and Google and all this kind of stuff. So because I think, what's interesting is that if you think about these industries and you look at tech, right, you're putting together an ad, managing like what this ad is for people watching YouTube, when people watching YouTube is complete diversity. So it's like, it is everybody who's watching the video. It's not one segment. And yet you've got these certain people doing it. I'm not using YouTube. You might have but I think about that, like, in my industry, in the sleep industry, the female or the person maybe who represents as a female in a couple will make the buying decision on a mattress like 85% of the time. And yet the industry is like 80-20. If the workers, you know what I mean? Or the people like designing, so you're like, wait, so no, there's like barely any females designing the beds, and yet all the females are making a decision. It just doesn't make any sense. But you're like, shoot, these industries got this way. Now we just have to slowly like peel those layers back,
Yeah, absolutely agree.
So last question for you. So after you watch The Intern, obviously, then I'll have another question. But before then, so let's say, we'll use The Intern as an example. Let's say there's this young person, they're coming in, they signed up for some summer internship at Google, and here's Reena walking in, we get to meet Reena, she's head of user experience. What would be like one piece of advice you would give to somebody who's just finishing school, going into their career?
Do you mean female, like on the topic of just, yeah? So in that vein, I would say this is the big thing I have learned, and I would love, like, if I could share this with my younger self, I would. I would say, it's that thing we were talking about, like, don't feel like it's you and that you are not enough and that the problem lies within, because so that's as humans, I think that's what we jump to, that conclusion, like, oh, there must be something wrong with me, or I don't fit in, or I need to change. Just that one insight took me so long to figure out, like, oh my gosh, yeah, no, it's not me, and I'm fine the way I am. It's that's not the problem. And if I could say that, if I could share that with someone else who was just starting their career, or just, again, like with my younger self, I think if I knew that, I would have saved myself so much heartache, because I was just trying, I was like spinning, I was trying to find a way to fit but the way I was trying to fit was by changing myself, and that's never the way to do it. So that would be the one piece of advice kind of on this topic that I would give someone or myself if I could rewind time.
I love that, you know, and I think that A, it's really good advice, and B, that totally resonates with me for sure. You know, I can remember, I think that the best advice I ever got from a mentor, who I work with now, who's an amazing guy, this guy, Brian Baxter, who hired me now at Avocado. But prior to that, I was starting a new job, a new career. It's like 5 years ago. And one of the parts of the job was I was going to start doing all the buying duties for this big company. And so I'd never been an actual buyer. I'd had experience going to markets and doing all these things, but designing products and training on products, but not actually buying with a huge budget, you know, millions of dollars and all this stuff at stake. And I was trying to pick all these people's brain, you know, on how to do it. And I call this guy who's like a close friend of mine, you know, and I was like, how, you know, give me some advice. You've been doing this. He did the job forever, 20 years. He's really good, the best I'd ever been at it. And he's like, hey, whatever anyone told you, you need to forget it and not do that. And I'm like, okay, why is that? And he's like, because you were hired for you. You have a unique personality. You're super outgoing. You're way different. You're doing everything through relationships and this whole new style. He's like, you just have to be you. That's why they hired you. Don't come in here with any of this other stuff. He goes, the industry is kind of older. It's getting played out. It needs a shot in the arm. Just go be you. And
Yeah.
I remember at first, like, well, that's not really good advice. Like, you know, you're not giving me anything. And then I step back. I'm like, okay, just be me. And I attacked that job from such a different angle than kind of all of my peers. And thankfully it worked out, you know, I had a lot of success. And I think, you know, when you base things on being your authentic self, I think that's when you have the greatest opportunity for success, you know, because I've definitely had times in my life where I wasn't authentically, or I was, not that I wasn't authentic, it's just, I think I was trying to be who I thought maybe someone else wanted me to be, or a significant other wanted me, or, you know what I mean? It was like, so then you're not truly being yourself. And I don't think you can be really happy that way. And I definitely don't think you can be at your best, like, for sure.
Yeah. No, I completely agree with you. And I feel like you articulated it so well. It's like when we try to be something we're not, and we let all these outside influences affect us, it's like we're clouding our light. Like we each have something really that we're good at, that we're amazing at, and then we're just clouding that. And it's like if you just push that all aside and you just don't worry about that, and you just focus on shining that light that, you know, that each of us have, you're right. That's when we can be our best and be our happiest. So very well articulated. Yeah.
Thank you. I'm gonna freeze that frame, so it'll be like good. I'm just gonna save it forever.
Perfect.
So last question. I said last question, but did you watch the Olympics at all, or are you an Olympic?
I didn't. So I love the Olympics. I'm not, I don't play sports very much. I used to when I was younger. But I do sometimes watch sports, but I didn't get to watch the Olympics. I was moving. I just moved in the middle of all this. And so I would have loved to watch the Olympics, but I didn't get a chance. I'll have to watch some replays.
I know I didn't watch much, but my question was going to be, so when you do watch the Olympics, I'm sure you caught a few little things here or there. So where's your pull from? Are you still rooting for Canada and everything?
That is a great question. There was a basketball game where I think was it the Warriors were playing the Raptors or something like that. It was very confusing. I'm like, do I root for Toronto or do I?
Oh yeah, a couple years ago, like in the finals. Like, yeah,
I know. Yeah. You know, it's a very confusing situation. So if it's just either one involved in whatever particular game, then if it's Canada against some other country, then I'll root for Canada. If it's you know, the US or something California based, then I'll root for them. But if they're playing against each other, that's when it gets really confusing. And then I think at that point I just root for both. I can't pick. Although I will say I'm a Canadian at heart, so I feel like Canada is always going to feel like home. So it's really hard to let that go. You know, you're loyal to the place you live in, but Canada is always home.
Nice. All right. So this is not a question, so I can still keep talking. So I know you said, hey, if you could have told your younger self, you know, XYZ, you would have. You talked about, asked you about giving some advice. So what if there's some people out there who want to connect or want to be able to see your content, want to listen to our voice? What's the best way for them to do that?
That is a great question. I would love that. First of all, if anyone wants to connect, I'm always so thrilled to. So my personal information, the best way to find me is either on LinkedIn, or my website is just my name, so reenamerchant.com. And Our Voice is that if anyone's interested in Our Voice, it's linked from my website, but the website for Our Voice is IamOurVoice.com. And that's the best way to find out information about that. And yes, please do connect. Always happy to.
Yes, and you have to check out because Reena has the greatest headshot of all time. Like
Thank
this
you.
piece. Really cool. I'm gonna do one. So if you have to, like, unbelievable.
Yeah. We should do it so that we have matching headshots,
Yeah.
and you're like posing the same way.
Okay, you're kidding, but I'm gonna do it. So that's what's gonna happen. You're gonna watch the intern.
Okay.
And
You do that. I'm gonna watch the intern. Yeah.
All right, Reena. Well, thank you so much. I know you're really busy, and I appreciate the time. I think everyone's gonna love listening and getting to know you a little bit because I know I did. And hopefully we'll see you soon.
Thank you, Brett. I appreciate the opportunity. It was fun chatting with you, and thanks for the opportunity. Thank you for what you're doing with your work and through your podcasts, and for giving everyone a voice and for creating a platform for everyone. So thank you.
No problem. Talk soon.